Welcome to Board Game Casual and my annual Top 10 New to Me Games of the Year list for 2025. Now, just as a reminder here, these aren't necessarily games that came out this year, but games that I played for the first time in 2025. So in addition to new games, you might see some familiar favorites or perhaps some games that you let slip by. Also, just as a note, I don't include any expansions in this list. 2025 was a really interesting year because I think more than any other year, this list has sort of a clear divide where the lower portion of the list is made up of really solid games and games that were pleasant surprises this year. But then you have some really outstanding heavy hitters at the top of the list. I've never had this difficult a time figuring out which game would be my number one, much less my number 1, 2, and 3, because really it feels like this list has 3 clear number ones. But I'll talk more about that when I get there. Without further ado, let's get into the top 10 new to me games of 2025. First up, my honorable mention I'm using as a big caveat slot this year. I'm giving it to Edge of Darkness. Edge of Darkness is a big production that leverages the same card crafting system that's in Mystic Vale, where you're sleeving transparent card inserts together, building more and more powerful cards over time as part of a larger deck building mechanic. What's cool about Edge of Darkness in particular is that it's a shared deck building game. The cards you build ultimately cycle back into a shared market, which means players might end up with each other's cards, for better or worse. And this is all part of a bigger competitive worker placement game with enemies to defeat, objectives to complete, some push your luck, and more. The reason I can't put Edge of Darkness in my top 10, however, is because unfortunately my play was cut short, and my friends and I didn't have a chance to complete our game. But I wanted to at least mention this game because I don't see a lot of people talking about it, and I thought it was a lot of fun while we were playing. I'm really looking forward to getting in a full play. If you're a fan of this card crafting system, you might want to go check out Edge of Darkness, my honorable mention for 2025. Coming in at number 10 is probably the game that was the biggest surprise to me this year. Edging its way onto the list, Disgraced House. Disgraced House is a suitless trick-taking game for 2 to 6 players, where you and your opponents are playing as competing samurai cat clans vying for political influence. This game consists of a unique deck of cards, which as mentioned, don't have any suits. Each card, however, is double-sided. By default, you play a card using its black side. However, you can spend a fate token when you play a card to play its red side instead, which is a really fun twist and a nice way to squeak out of a tight spot if you're in a pinch. There are also these fun ally and advisor cards that you can play which give you instant or ongoing effects. In fact, the first choice you'll make at the beginning of the round is whether to keep the ones you're dealt or discard either the ally or advisor cards for fate tokens. Tricks are played with the last played highest card winning the trick, except for the last round called the Peace Treaty. In the last round, the person who plays the highest card is out. They're disgraced and score no points. All other players score points based on the value of the card they played, half the value rounded up. So it's this fun balance of not wanting to play too high that you're the highest, but the higher card you play, the more points you can score. I'm not necessarily good at trick-taking games, but I enjoy playing them, and I really like what Disgraced House has going on. If you like fun twists on trick-taking, it's definitely worth checking out. That's my number 10, Disgraced House. Number 9 on the list is Moonrakers. While this game can be a bit of a mixed bag, especially speaking as someone who doesn't typically like a lot of negotiating in games, I do think Moonraker's strengths outweigh its weaknesses, and with the right group, it's an amazing production that's a lot of fun. Moonrakers is a competitive deck building game where you and your opponents are attempting to complete contract cards for victory points and other rewards. The contracts, however, are typically too big for one person to complete on their own, especially in the beginning of the game. So you'll have to negotiate with other players to come in on the contract with you to complete it together, and you'll have to agree on how to divvy up the rewards beforehand, which is often easier said than done. It's a game that's very group dependent, and personally I think it works best at 4 or 5 players, which can make it tricky to get to the table. I find myself thinking about Moonrakers a lot though, and I'm constantly thinking about different ways to maybe strategize or secretly get points, and how to work around the core of the game where everyone will always be wanting to divide missions evenly, or making sure that they're keeping the player that's furthest ahead in check. It's a really interesting game, unlike anything else on my shelf, and for that reason it makes number 9 on my list, Moonrakers. Number 8 is Mysalia, and candidly, I kept doing a double take seeing it on my drafts list and second guessing whether it's really best of the year worthy. While I enjoy Mysalia a lot, it feels miles away from some of the heavy hitters at the top of this list. But here's the thing, Mysalia made it to my table a lot this year. It became the perfect game to reach for to introduce to people who aren't heavy board gamers. It's pretty easy to learn and to teach, and it has a great table presence that really gets people excited about trying it. On multiple occasions, this was the first deck building game that the folks I was playing with have ever played. So credit where credit is due, and Mysalia makes number 8 on the list. Mysalia is a lighter weight, competitive deck building puzzle pusher for 1 to 4 players. In this game, each player is going to be using their cards to move and ultimately remove dewdrops from their player board and onto the rotating Shrine of Life that, once full, is given a spin and dictates 1 to 2 dewdrops players have to add back to their board in the specified locations. The first player to remove all their dewdrops off their board wins. It's not the deepest game in terms of deck building and card play, but there's a great amount of card variety that makes it feel different from game to game, and you do feel a great sense of your deck getting stronger as you build it, buying more powerful cards from the market. And the way the upgraded cards work with what's on your board makes for some fun choices and a lot of opportunities for players to feel clever. I picked this game up on a whim when it was on sale for under $25, and I'm certainly not disappointed. It's a game that makes for a great reach on the shelf when trying to pull new gamers into the hobby. That's my number 8, Mysalia. I always like having a few lighter games on the shelf that have a wide appeal which I can play with anyone. Games that are low stakes but high fun for non-gamers and experienced gamers alike. And this year, there was an undeniable standout in that category, Flip 7, which coincidentally makes number 7 on my list. Flip 7 is often described as blackjack for gamers. This is a lightweight, little push-your-luck card game that's snappy and full of high-energy excitement. It consists of a unique set of cards where there's 1-1 card, 2-2 cards, 3-3 cards, all the way up to 12-12 cards. And each round, you're trying to score as many points as you can by taking cards without busting. In this game, you bust if you get doubles, so 2 10s for example. Simple as that. The game plays at a really quick pace. Take a card or stay, take a card or stay, and there's that fun decision if you want to push for just one more card. There's some additional cards in the deck with special powers that are fun and interactive, and bonus points if you can get to a hand of 7 cards without busting. It's super easy to learn. Even my parents, who aren't big into games, have a great time with this one. And there's just a lot of excitement on the table. You're equally vested on other people's turns, watching to see if they're going to push for that extra card. It's simple, but it's a ton of fun that anyone can play. Novices and experienced board gamers can all play together, yet it puts everyone on a level playing field. I actually got rid of my copy of 10, another lightweight push-your-luck game, once I got Flip 7, because honestly, I just didn't ever see picking up 10 over Flip 7 for this type of situation. Flip 7's a lot snappier and with more excitement. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. My number 7, Flip 7. Coming in at number 6 is Veil of Eternity. This is a little competitive engine building game that feels like a CCG in a box. The theme is very Pokemon-esque, as you're collecting and taming these magical creature cards that you then summon into your tableau for various bonuses, actions, and points. And it's a fun puzzle of how best to make your cards work together. What really makes Veil of Eternity unique are the constraints you're forced to work under, like only being able to hold a maximum of 4 coins regardless of their value, and how the round number dictates the maximum number of cards you can have in your tableau, as well as the cost to trash any of your cards from your tableau. It's a really nice production with a great table presence and some nice chunky wooden tokens, though it is a little clunky when the cards come out at the beginning of the round and everyone has to be able to study them before the bid. To me, this game feels a lot like Furnace, and another solid game I played this year, It's a Wonderful World. I actually prefer Veil of Eternity to It's a Wonderful World, which is why Veil of Eternity makes the list and It's a Wonderful World doesn't. Don't get me wrong, It's a Wonderful World is a great game in its own right and would certainly be somewhere in my 11 through 20. I like that Veil of Eternity isn't quite as much of a brain burner as It's a Wonderful World. In It's a Wonderful World, those last few rounds turn into a bit of a silent math problem as everyone's trying to figure out all of their options and which one will score the most points. Veil of Eternity feels a bit more breezy, and I really like the way it flows, even though I probably prefer the instant, easy-to-understand symbology on the It's a Wonderful World cards to having to read through all the text on the Veil of Eternity cards. I do wonder if Veil of Eternity will have the staying power over time. There's still a ton I have yet to discover, being that it comes with so many different cards and therefore different strategies, but it'll be interesting to see how often I reach for this game over others. That said, my time with this game so far has been great, and it definitely made an impact on me this year. Number 6, Veil of Eternity. Coming in at number 5 is an awesome game, Crusaders Thy Will Be Done. Somehow this game just flew under the radar for me when it was released back in 2018, as well as its re-release in 2022. There were a lot of really strong games coming out around that time, so I can definitely see how this one might have gotten overshadowed. It was only recently that this game caught my attention when I saw Chris Yee and Wendy Yee from the Dice Tower raving about it on their top 100 games of all time lists, which caused me to seek out a copy, and I'm so glad I did. Crusaders Thy Will Be Done is a competitive action selection game, where you'll be moving knights across the map, crusading into enemy territory, constructing buildings for benefits, and spreading influence. What makes this game unique is how your actions are driven from a Rondel-Mancala mechanism on your player board. Essentially, you're going to choose one of the 6 action spaces with some amount of tokens on them, which determine the strength of that action. These are things like move, crusade, build, etc. Once done, you'll take those tokens and distribute them onto the following action spaces in clockwise order, making each following space more powerful for next time. And you'll keep taking actions, pushing tokens around and around this donut throughout the game, while unlocking benefits and abilities from the rest of your player board. The key is trying to find the right balance of which action to take when, and thinking ahead to which actions then become more powerful as a result. I'm not necessarily good at this game, but win or lose, you always get some fun, powerful feeling turns in, and it's a lot of fun. It's a solid production as well, with great chunky wooden tokens and thick punchboard pieces, and it offers enough variety in the setup that it helps it feel different from game to game. Best of all, turns are really quick. Take an action, next player. Take an action, next player. And it plays in under an hour. This game feels like it has the perfect length and certainly doesn't overstay its welcome. If you were like me and somehow missed Crusaders Thy Will Be Done, I highly recommend checking it out. That's my number 5. My number 4 new to me game of 2025 is Long Shot the Dice Game. I really like this game. Once again, number 4 almost seems too low, being how much I like this game, but it just goes to show how strong the top 3 are. Long Shot the Dice Game is a horse racing themed betting game mixed with some roll'em right. You'll roll the dice to move the horses and take actions on the number rolled, like placing bets, activating bonuses, or buying that horse for added benefits and the hope to place in the race, taking home an additional cash reward. As horses move, they each have a defined mapping of other horses that will also get to move. And as the game goes along, you can change which horses get to move with which other horses. And you might even build up to some actions that let you proactively move horses of your choice backwards or forwards. The game ends once 3 horses cross the finish line. Players cash out their bets, endgame bonuses, and leftover cash, and whoever has the most money wins. While it has a similar theme to another game, Long Shot the Dice Game has much more of a strategy game feel compared to the real-time betting-focused game Ready, Set, Bet. In fact, I'd say Long Shot the Dice Game feels more similar to the board game Camel Up. And while Camel Up certainly has the more impressive table presence, I actually think I prefer Long Shot the Dice Game. Long Shot the Dice Game has a much snappier tempo. The horses are moving every turn, and it feels like you have a lot more options to influence the race. Long Shot the Dice Game has so much fun packed into such an affordable little game. I love that it can play up to 8, so it's perfect for nights where I have a larger group at the table. And it's also something that's welcoming to casual gamers. I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't. Number 4, Long Shot the Dice Game. Okay, heading into the top 3, this is where it got really difficult because, as I said earlier, it really feels like I have 3 games all worthy of being number 1. I went back and forth so many times on how to order these things, on their design merits, on their versatility, on their production, etc. And ultimately, the way I looked at it is which game or games would I keep if I was forced to get rid of the others. And so with that said, coming in at number 3, which feels crazy to say that this game is only number 3, is River of Gold. I love River of Gold. Its outstanding production with big chunky components was enough for me to rate it a 10 out of 10 in my review. River of Gold is a fast-paced, competitive, Euro-y dice rolling and engine building game with a Legend of the Five Rings theme. I've said it before and I truly mean this as a compliment. River of Gold feels like a good, properly strategic gamer's version of Monopoly. This game is fantastic in what Monopoly wishes it could be. Ultimately, your turn is guided by rolling a die, but you have so many choices on what action you want to take based on that die roll. You can move one of your ships down the river collecting resources from the ports, and you have 2 ships to choose from. You could build a port of your own, which means you collect a passive reward every time your or another player's ship lands on that space. Or you can fulfill one of your secret contracts, matching that die roll for points, influence, and other possible upgrades and bonuses. And on top of that, if you really aren't happy with any of those choices, you can spend Divine Favor to alter your die in one direction or the other. The game gives you so many choices and so many fun things to do, and yet turns are quick and snappy. River of Gold moves at a really good pace, and there are just so many different ways to strategize and find your own path to victory. Number 3, River of Gold. Number 2 of the best new to me games this year is Revive. Revive was the number 1 game I came into the year wanting to play, and it definitely didn't disappoint. Revive blends exploration, engine building, and strategic resource management into a big but snappy competitive board game experience. It's a game that definitely takes up a lot of table space. You've got a big central game board, along with card and resource markets, and each player has their own asymmetric faction board that combines with their own technology board, plus space to lay out cards and such. It's not quite as big as Mosaic, but definitely came close. And like Mosaic, it's a bit of a slog to get through the rulebook, but once you get going, it's pretty straightforward, and everything makes sense and follows a logical flow. On your turn, you're either going to perform 2 actions of your choice. These are things like play a card, explore, populate, build, etc., provided you have the resources to do those actions. Otherwise, you're going to take a rest action to reset and refresh your cards and board. This game reminds me a lot of Lost Ruins of Arnak, one of my favorite games of all time. Both in how you're flipping tiles over to explore on the main board and how the further away you want to go, the more resources it's going to cost, and especially in the overall mechanics and feeling of the game, where you're trying to do things in a way that allow you to squeeze out enough resources for an extra action and trying to put off that resting phase as long as you can. One of the more unique things about this game, however, is the card play. Rather than using traditional deck building like in Lost Ruins of Arnak, if you choose to play a card action in Revive, you're going to play just one card. That card has to fit into one of the slots on your game board. If you tuck it into a top slot, then you get the benefits from the top of the card. If you tuck it into the bottom slot, you take the benefits from the bottom of the card. This makes for some really fun but agonizing choices since you'll often want both. I kept going back and forth whether I'd be ranking Revive or River of Gold higher. I have so many versions of this list where they're in different order. Ultimately, for me, it comes down to that card mechanism. I love the choice of when and which cards to tuck where and how best to upgrade the slots you're tucking the cards into. Tough choice, but that's my number 2, Revive. And finally, number 1 on my top new to me games this year is Gnar. I just love this game. It might not be quite as big or as deep as River of Gold or Revive, but Gnar has enthusiastically made it to the table maybe 2 or 3 times as much as River of Gold and Revive combined. It's meaty enough for serious gamers, but also something I can teach to the more casual board game fan as well. Gnar is a medium-weight, competitive engine-building game where you and your opponents are taking on the role of Viking clan leaders. On your turn, you're either going to be playing a Viking card from your hand onto your tableau, activating the entire column of cards in that color, gaining you benefits and resources, and then drawing another card from the market space dictated by the card you played. Or you're going to spend Viking cards from your tableau to take the Explore action, buying location cards that you add to the top of your tableau, increasing your trade benefits. In either case, you're going to have the option to do some trading for rewards, including using your recruit tokens, which act as a type of wild token that can be used in multiple ways to help you mitigate recruiting or spending. Gnar is a fast-paced race to 40 victory points. It plays in about 30 minutes with turns that are quick and snappy. It's easy to teach and learn, but full of really fun choices, crunchy decisions, and with multiple paths to victory. It's a game that feels both familiar yet fresh at the same time. If you like games like Splendor or Century, Gnar feels like just a bit of a step up from those. Similarly, it gives you the feeling of a game like Wingspan or Flamecraft, but in a much more distilled game. Despite the fact that I think this game has atrociously small and fiddly tokens and game boards, I can't recommend Gnar enough. Every so often a game will come through that just clicks with my brain, and Gnar is definitely one of those games. It gives you a ton of fun decisions to make, and yet feeling clever in this game almost comes effortlessly. If you have the chance, go check out Gnar. my number one new to me game of 2025. There you have it, my top 10 new to me games of 2025. If you'd like to hear more about these games, I've got full review videos for most of them on the channel that you can go check out. Similarly, if you're hungry for more, you can check out the best new to me games from previous years and even how they stack up against each other over time. If you've played any of these games, I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. I'd also love to hear what your top new to you games were this year. I love reading through the games you've been enjoying, and it often inspires me to chase down some of the games I might not otherwise be seeking out. That's gonna do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for liking and subscribing, and I'll see you next time here on Board Game Casual.